Representative Barry, do you want to lead into your bill hearing?
Sure. Why don't we, do you want to start with introductions and then I'm looking forward to presenting my bill, and thank you so much for chairing, Senator, so that I can do that.
My pleasure.
Okay, you're all set.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. I'm Senator Eloise Vitelli, stepping in as chair this morning in the absence of our regular Senate Chair, Senator Lawrence, who is not here. We're going to be hearing a bill this morning presented by Representative Barry, which is also why I am taking on this job. We will begin this morning with introductions, and I'm just going to go across the screen, and Representative Kessler is first on my right.
Good morning, everybody. Representative Chris Kessler from South Portland, representing District 32, part of South Portland and a little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
Representative Grohowski.
Good morning, all. Representative Nicole Grohowski. I serve House District 132, people of Ellsworth and Trenton.
And Representative Wadsworth.
Good morning, everyone. Nate Wadsworth, represent House District 70, Southern Oxford County.
And our House Chair, Representative Barry.
Good morning. My name is Seth Berry, and I represent House District 55, Bowdoin, Bodenham, most of Richmond, and beautiful Swan Island.
Thank you. Representative Sachs.
Good morning, Melanie Sachs, House District 48, which is Freeport and part of Pownell.
Representative Ziegler.
Good morning. I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96 in Waldo County, the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Mora, Palermo, and Searsmont.
And Representative Carlo.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Nathan Carlo. I represent House District 16, which is part of Buxton, Hollis, and part of Saco. I want to apologize. I'm a little underdressed today. We had a little bit of snow down here, so I was occupied taking care of that. But I promise that I'll be on top of my game tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. I think several of us have been dealing with the snow falling down around us. Representative Foster, is it still coming down where you are? And would you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. I'm Steve Foster, representing District 104, the towns of Charleston, Stetson, Exeter, Garland, and I'm in Dexter. And yes, it's snowing quite beautifully here now. Looks like a nice pre-Christmas storm with about a foot or so of snow on the ground. Thank you.
Wonderful. So one of the advantages of doing remote work is that we don't have to be on the road traveling during the snowfall. So good morning, everyone. We are here this morning to hear a bill presented by Representative Seth Berry. And I believe we will just jump right into that. It's LD 1847. Representative Berry.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Senator, and fellow members of the committee. Good to be with you. I already said who I am, and so I'll jump right in. I am here today to present LD 1847, which is entitled An Act to Prohibit a Public Utility from Terminating or Disconnecting Service to a Public Safety Facility without advance notice and approval. And boiling it down, LD 1847 would simply protect public safety, provide an additional measure of protection by requiring a formal notification process in order to avoid disconnections that could end in tragedy. And the origin of this is that at least twice in recent years that I'm aware of, Central Maine Power, our largest transmission and distribution utility, has come very close to shutting down critical public safety facilities in Maine. In each case that I mentioned, the issue was a billing error. It actually related to CMP's billing system, which, as you know, is based in Boston and is evidently not well suited oftentimes to our municipalities, which frequently pay multiple bills for multiple buildings and meters. You will hear today from John Duke, the town manager currently from Rockport, about a situation when he was town manager for Newcastle in 2018. That was the first instance that came to my attention. And at the time, I assumed it was a one-off. In that incident, CMP's technician first shut down the public works area. This action shut off safety lighting at the town sand pile, which certainly a day like today or during the darker hours, important for the loading of plow trucks. And after disconnecting public works, the technician then went on to the volunteer fire department in Newcastle, where he was evidently prepared to cut the power there as well. Fortunately, someone was there. That's not always the case in our rural volunteer fire departments, but someone was there and sort of intercepted the situation, if you will. The town got involved, and the confusion over the bill, which had been paid, was cleared up. So it turned out the town had paid its bill. This was an issue, as I mentioned, of multiple meters, like most of our municipalities have. And the billing services, which are done through Avangrid out of Boston, perhaps, and this is a bit of conjecture, not really knowing how things work here with our municipalities, had incorrectly applied the payment. This is what the town was told. They had applied the payment to a different meter. Perhaps they had mailed disconnection notices and warnings to the meter location where there was no mail receptacle. I don't know. I think that we can all look into that and conjecture. But clearly, CMP had decided the facility was delinquent despite the issuance of payment and would be disconnected. I was made aware of this event in Newcastle thanks to a report by WGME and the I-Team. At that time, as I said, I chose not to submit legislation. I assumed that it was a mistake and Central Manpower had learned from the mistake and it wouldn't happen again. But then I read about the Buckfield incident this past spring. In the Lewiston Sun Journal, and a very, very similar story was told. And I realized then that I had overestimated CMP's competence or its caring, or both. On June 30th, 2021, this past summer, a CMP worker arrived to shut down the volunteer fire department in Bucksfield. Once again, had no one been present, the building would have been shut down. Once again, fortunately, someone was present and immediately took action. And once again, the bill had been paid. Once again, the Avangrid billing office in Boston had not correctly attributed the payment to the various meters belonging to the town. Today, you will also hear from Bradley Plant on this matter. Mr. Plant was interim town manager when the error occurred in Buckfield, and can explain this incident in more detail. This bill would not fix the billing issues, which clearly are ongoing. Only CMP can do that with help from Avangrid, perhaps by working more effectively with our towns. But LD 1847 does provide a layer of protection to keep this unreal comedy of errors from ending in a real and irreversible tragedy. And here's the most important part. Now more than ever, public safety depends on electricity. Life-saving equipment for ambulances and fire trucks requires charging. Police departments are adopting electric vehicles. Diesel engines for our plow trucks and other emergency vehicles use electric block heaters to reduce wintertime idling or the need for heated bays. Heated bays themselves may increasingly depend on heat pumps. All of this requires electricity, even in the smallest and most rural of facilities. Here's a partial list, for example, of some of the many items on an ambulance that require charging. The cardiac monitor defibrillator, suction for airways, fluid for IV delivery, the razor used to shave chest hair before applying the monitor and/or defibrillator pads, the radio for emergency communications, the heater core for the diesel engine, the stretcher battery, the automatic CPR device, the laryngoscope handles for intubation. Again, just a partial list. And it's important to note that many of these ambulances are in small rural towns with entirely volunteer crews who are often not there when a technician shows up to shut off the power, unless the building is equipped with an automatic whole building generator and it successfully starts up, or unless someone happens to be present when the power is cut. There may be no awareness until the equipment is needed, and needed immediately. Gas and water too are crucial to public safety facilities. I think we'll hear more about that from those following me. And so the bill does include these utilities as well. In some, where our so-called public utilities fail to protect public safety voluntarily, as CMP has now done repeatedly, despite bills having been paid, it falls to public servants like us to require it. I trust we will all want to act immediately to avert safety problems in the future. I look forward to your questions and to working with you in committee on this bill.
Thank you, Representative Berry. Are there questions for the representative? Representative Wadsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might have missed it, Seth, but does this apply to COUs as well as IOUs?
It is currently, let's go and look at the actual text because it's been a while since I actually looked at that. And apologize, just give me a moment. We have not heard of any issues with our COUs, but I think it is a very valid question, Representative. And the public utility is not further defined. It's all public utilities. So the answer is yes.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Representative Berry, for presenting this bill.
Thank you. And I believe there is a co-sponsor who's interested in testifying, Senator Bennett.
Yes, thank you. Jason, can you bring Senator Bennett in to join us, please? Good morning, Senator.
Good morning. Let me get organized here.
When you do, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Senator Vitelli, Representative Berry, members of the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. I am Rick Bennett of Oxford. I have the honor of serving 13 towns in Oxford and Cumberland counties in the Maine Senate, and I'm pleased to be the lead Senate co-sponsor of LD 1847. As you've heard, the proposal is before you today because of a couple of experiences, most recently that of the Buckfield Fire Department. And as Representative Berry said, in June of last year, multiple news outlets reported that CMP threatened to disconnect Buckfield's fire station after the town allegedly had not paid its bill. Now, CMP claims that the power was never at risk of being shut off and that the employee was actually sent to the fire station just to discuss the situation. The town of Buckfield, it turned out, had sent payment to CMP, but apparently the check, according to CMP, lacked a proper account number and wasn't credited to the account. As you've heard, this bill seeks to put measures in place so that this sort of confusion never happens again for these critical assets in our communities. LD 1847 would require a public utility before it terminates or disconnects a public safety facility's utility service to provide 60 days advance written notice. The utility must also obtain written authorization from the PUC and the Department of Public Safety to terminate or disconnect the utility service. Now, the fact that this episode happened at all is yet more sad testimony to the extraordinary ineptitude of our foreign-owned utility in managing our critical local electricity infrastructure. CMP's captive customers are less than 2% of a massive multinational monopoly. Now, you'll recall that last summer, the Liberty Consulting Group, in its independent audit of CMP, funded by the company's customers, concluded that management's, quote, overemphasizing of cuts and limits on resources as a means of closing gaps and meeting the earnings expectations of the equity investment community has sacrificed effectiveness in providing service. This is one classic example of that. In response to this report, your House Chair, Representative Berry, then concluded, and I quote, management at CMP and at Avangrid is in a shambles. Greed is baked in. Their boards are stacked with lawyers and former politicians demanding profits, not qualified engineers improving performance. The minute we look away, they'll be back to their old ways. This is not a system we can count on for all our future energy needs, end quote. I agree with him completely. We cannot look away. In a monopoly owned and run to benefit foreign governments and foreign shareholders, we must realize that the market's invisible hand inevitably becomes an invisible fist. That is why the reasonable steps called for in this bill are unhappily necessary to ensure power to vital town services does not get shut off. Thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer or at least entertain your questions.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. Are there questions for the senator from committee members? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here with us this morning.
With you, thank you.
Jason, I believe there are some others in the waiting room ready to testify in favor of this bill. I know that John Duke was there. Maybe you could bring him over. And we'll hear from him. Good morning, Mr. Duke.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for being with us. Please go right ahead.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Good morning, Senator Vitelli, Representative Berry, members of the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is John Duke. I'm the town manager of the town of Rockport. I've been in municipal government for nearly 20 years, an administrative role in 3 communities before returning to my hometown in Rockport this year. Rarely do I take the step of involving myself in matters at the state level. We have more than enough to do at the local level here at the municipal level. But my own personal experiences have forced me to come forward in hopes that you, the members of this committee, will take action to support LD 47. Before I returned to Rockport, I served as town manager in the town of Newcastle, located in central Lincoln County, a population of 1,763 robust people. We had a small but mighty office staff of 3 employees plus an outstanding fire chief. Our road commissioner was a well-meaning local contractor, and everyone's wearing multiple hats. That's just how it's done in small communities all over our state, from the Canadian border all the way down to Senator Lawrence's district down south. Though our small town office staffs are mighty, they also place great responsibilities in the hands of a few. Challenges in larger communities can be overcome more easily thanks to larger staffs and a bigger megaphone that comes with those larger communities. I've seen the difference myself just in going from a town of 1,700 to 3,600 people. And that happens all the time. Certainly the bigger fish has a bigger chance of getting the ear of Central Maine Power or other utilities. In the late winter of 2018, I received a phone call from my road commissioner informing me that we had no power at our sand and salt shed. Thankfully, daylight hours were growing at that time of year, and our major storm events had ended for the year. But this was a puzzle that required quick problem solving. Until my town clerk reminded me of the ongoing issues we'd encountered with central main power billing going back to the previous fall. This was not a surprise, but in the middle of budget season, sometimes you're not focused on every detail. You're more focused on having the plow trucks hitting the mailboxes. But nevertheless, these are the things you deal with in a municipality. Before we were able to solve the initial issue with a lack of power at our sand and salt facility, again, as Representative Berry noted, lights on that facility allow the plow trucks to fill with sand and salt so they can actually do their work. No lights, no sand and salt. Obviously a huge concern. But before we're able to solve that issue, our fire chief told us he had received a phone call from CMP at his home, stating that the fire station would be disconnected. Thankfully, our fire chief stopped this action using sheer force of will that only a fire chief with 30 years on the job can pull off. How my chief received the phone call at his home, or why the call didn't come to the town office or fire station itself, is beyond me. But nevertheless, I was a town manager with a sand and salt shed without power, and potentially next on the list is a fire station with our power due to be shut off by CMP, despite our bills being paid in a timely manner, just like every other customer in good standing. If I had any confidence in the ability for CMP to adequately communicate with valuable public safety entities such as a municipality, let alone the average homeowner, I could have assurance that even small towns such as Newcastle could have the time it needs to work with CMP to resolve matters like this. I won't ascribe any malice in this matter, but I know that when vital municipal services like fire departments and public works are on the line, we don't have time to talk to customer service agents in Newark, New Jersey, or Boston, Massachusetts, who will bounce our call around the call center before we can fill our SCBA oxygen bottles or operate the Emergency Operations Center, which manages events when life, limb, and property are on the line. There simply is a difference between public services like those provided by municipalities. They require a higher level of care on the part of our public utility partners. That is precisely what LD 1847 can provide. While Newcastle was able to work through our issue in 2017 and avoid a power disconnection and resolve our matter at the sand and salt area, we remained on edge regarding our CMP bill payments through the remainder of my tenure. So perhaps it should not surprise me or any of you that my new finance director came to me just last month in Rockport, that we too in Rockport is finding difficulty with our bills from CMP. We are unable to find a way to make the math work. Despite frequent calls and probably a forthcoming call to the Public Utilities Commission, we may be back in the same situation I found myself in 5 years ago. I'm hoping lightning won't strike twice, but the passage of this piece of legislation, I and all my fellow Rockport residents can have peace of mind that vital municipal services will be left standing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Are there questions from the committee? I see one from Representative Grochowski.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I appreciate how this has inspired you to come out to hopefully stop problems like this in the future. And we hope we don't make too much work for you in Augusta that you have to come testify all the time because I'm sure you're busy. I was just curious. I mean, it occurs to me, like as a household, I pay a lot of different bills. And actually, I have family members that have had problems in the Versant territory with a similar thing where the amount of money was being credited to the wrong account, et cetera. But I'm wondering, in your experience paying all these bills for so many years, have you had other issues with other companies or groups that you get services from, or is this really a spectacular screw up?
I would probably lean on the spectacular screw up side, to be quite honest. I think that part of the challenge that we face is we obviously have a number of facilities that have a meter, right? And while we have our own process to pay, we worked through a number of different methods to try to have the bills applied properly. We would staple all of our bills in one, have a tabulation of what those bills added up to. And so there's one check. We tried multiple checks. We've tried a number of different pathways to try to get through their system and try to think ahead of how they work, because it's a huge mess for us. I mean, you can imagine there's a warrant that's issued and then we have to go back and the checks back and forth. I mean, for a homeowner, it's a problem, but when you have 10, 15 different meters and facilities, it's mind boggling. And so, it's, unfortunately, we haven't been able to find a way to navigate their waters. And I think part of that issue, it's communication. It's also building a better relationship with critical pieces of, critical pieces such as municipalities, the state. I mean, there should be a better connection and there should be more communication between us all. But also it should be easy to just simply pay your bill. And we do, and yet here we are. So thank you for your question.
You all set, Representative? Representative Foster has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Duke. It's always good to hear where a hometown boy has come back to take a position such as yours in managing town affairs. A couple of questions. We've heard some words like tragedy here, and in light of what could be our first good blizzard in a while coming this next weekend, I'm a little curious. Obviously, you don't have a generator backup at your sands and salt shed facility, but I would guess that your crews are currently and in the past have been quite capable of managing things when the power goes out during a storm or a blizzard and they have to work at night. Is that not the case, or?
Absolutely, Representative Foster. They're a resourceful bunch, and you have to be, right, when you're in the middle of storm events such as those. I think the challenge that we found ourselves, and Representative Barry noted this, because we didn't have notice at our sand and salt area, our engine blocks had been plugged in, but we didn't know the power was out until they arrived at, on site. What was to our benefit is the contractor had a number of different trucks located elsewhere, and they could have responded. So we had a redundancy, but it's one of those situations certainly where you have to think fast and react quickly as you can. You always try to reduce the number of areas where things can go awry, and as you go through situations like this, major storm events, you try to find ways to ensure you don't fall into those same circumstances. So we've tried to add some cameras so that way if we didn't see the lights were on, or try to find other ways around it. But yeah, we were caught flat-footed certainly in that circumstance.
Thank you. I can understand that be a bad situation to be in, but thanks.
Thank you.
I was muted. Other questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Duke, for being with us here today, and good luck in the coming storm.
Thank you.
Jordan will continue on with those who are here to speak in favor of this legislation. I think we have a Bradley Plant. And so if you could bring him over, and then we'll go down the list. I'll give Bradley a minute to see if he can get his video up. I see we've since been joined by Representative Cuddy, so maybe while we're waiting for Mr. Plant to fully join us. Representative Cuddy, if you want to introduce yourself, and also Senator Trey Stewart joined us at the beginning. So Representative Cuddy and then Stewart, please introduce yourselves.
Thank you very much. My name is Scott Cuddy. I live in Winterport, Maine, and I represent House District 98, which is Winterport, Frankfort, Searsport, and Swanville. And I tried to time my entry this morning to fill up dead space. So I'm glad it worked out nicely.
Very well. Senator Stewart, sir, I missed you earlier.
No problem, Madam Chair. Good morning, folks. I'm Trey Stewart, State Senator in District 2, which is 51 communities in Aroostook and Penobscot counties, and I reside in Presque Isle.
Great, and you've both done a good job in bringing us Mr. Plant, who we can now see, and he's unmuted. So Mr. Plant, please proceed.
Good morning, Rep. Berry and Senator Vitelli and committee members. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. Our story is somewhat similar to the one you've already heard. The morning of June 30th, my fire chief showed up at my office extremely upset and explained to me that a technician from CMP had just showed up at the fire station and told him that he was there to disconnect the power due to non-payment of the bill. The fire chief did a quick song and dance, I guess. He had no idea what was going on. The technician specifically told him that the town had till 4:30. He'd be back at 4:30 to pull the plug, and we had till then to get it straightened out. We subsequently contacted the CMP billing department in Boston, who did a Mickey the Dunce act, knew nothing. And we were transferred to the office in Augusta, at which time we were told that that particular account, and as you've already heard, the municipalities all have multiple accounts for each different building or facility. That particular account was not paid. So my financial person, who is also the town clerk, by the way, wears multiple hats, was able to do an electronic transfer from our account to CMP, which satisfied them. But again, they claimed they had never received the check. Subsequently, the next day, when the mail came in, we discovered we received correspondence from CMP informing us that they had this check for payment of an account, a picture of the check as well, that was they were unable to decipher what account it went towards. Now, interestingly enough, all the other checks that were sent in a similar fashion, there was no problem. So obviously I contacted CMP myself, and was informed that there was no account number on the check. Well, previous to that, we always used invoice numbers. And those invoice numbers, it was no problem because they could associate the invoice number with the account, straightforward, and it should have been a problem. So of course, things kind of got a little bit blown up, and WGME got involved and so on. That's really the gist of it. I did have conversations with I think her title was Vice President of Public Affairs. I don't recall her name. And I did want to point out that when she on TV claimed that the gentleman went to the fire station to just discuss the non-payment, I explained to her that, well, it doesn't work that way. The fire department doesn't pay the bills. The bills are all paid through the town office or city hall or whatever the case may be. So what I did, the action I took, was to direct my finance person, when she paid the bills, she was to attach the stub. If you all, I'm sure you've all seen your electric bills, you get a stub, there's a stub that you're supposed to send in. Well, typically we didn't do that because there were so many accounts. So we had to take an extra step and attach the stubs to each individual check when we mailed them in to make sure that everything was paid. I will throw in a caveat there. I have been speaking to the current permanent town manager in Buckfield, and I understand through her that they're having some additional CMP issues with getting the bills paid. So it's not over with. In our particular case, I will say, to be completely upfront with you, we do have a small standby generator at the fire department that's supposed to come on automatically when the power goes down. It does not run the entire building, unfortunately. It only runs part of the building. So had this occurred, we may have been okay, but if that generator did not kick on, there was nobody there to get it up and running. So, my concern is I've been involved in public service in one form or another for over 50 years, and I've seen time after time things happen because we didn't take corrective action or somebody didn't do their job. And I think in this particular case, this legislation that has been proposed would add that extra layer of safety into the process to ensure that this didn't happen. And by the way, CMP also claimed that they attempted on several occasions, both via email, voicemail, phone calls, to notify us about this. If that's the case, nobody got the call, nobody got the email. There was nothing sent via US mail. And my discussions with the vice president was that maybe in the future, if something of this nature occurred, maybe if they came to the town hall, to the town office, it could have been taken care of. So that's my story. And I think this, although I'm not a big fan of introducing more governmental control or requirements to private operations, I think this is necessary. And I may say that I'm very pleased that Rep. Berry stepped to the plate on this, and that also it clearly has bipartisan support, which is very encouraging. And I hope that you approve this and send it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Plant, for being with us this morning. Are there questions from committee members for Mr. Plant? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Plant, first of all, for your service, and secondly, for being here this morning to testify. I appreciate the fact you brought up that your fire station has a backup generator, which I assume, I'm sure, having been involved in damage control training, and I'm sure you were involved during your service in training, that that's something that would be required. And certainly you mentioned in your testimony that this legislation is necessary before we have a loss of life incident. And I think also, as I mentioned before, we've heard the term tragedy used here. So it's good to know that you have a backup. I'm curious, obviously there's a lot of problems that you've brought forward here that we've heard of before with billing issues, but I'm curious if you would be content if the PUC through rulemaking were to address this rather than, as you mentioned, make another law. Thank you.
I did speak with PUC on 2 or 3 occasions. They were very inquisitive regarding the whole situation. I guess I'd leave that up to you folks, whether or not the PUC making a regulation would have as much impact as having a a law requiring it. I have never in all my years as a town manager in 3 towns in the state of Maine, and I've had no dealings with the PUC, and I'm not that sure that their regulations are that enforceable. So again, I guess I'd leave Rep. Foster. I guess I would leave that up to you folks to make that determination.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Mr. Plant? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir, for being with us this morning. Appreciate you being here. And Jordan, I believe there are 2 more folks waiting to testify in favor of this bill, Mr. Goldberg and Mr. Gillespie. So if you can bring one or the other or both of those over, we'll hear from them and then move on to those. If that's the end of that list, we'll hear others after that.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Goldberg, please go right ahead.
Thank you. Senator Vitale and members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Neil Goldberg, and I am providing testimony in support of LD 1847 on behalf of MMA. You just heard 2 pretty powerful and moving testimonials from public officials that went through this ordeal. And so there's nothing much more that I can add that they haven't already said with their experiences. But with that, I will still present some brief testimony for your consideration. So as word of this legislation spread amongst municipal officials, more examples of unwarranted or unsafe termination of electric utilities were revealed, none as dramatic as the examples that you just heard. Termination of service to the public safety facilities were by far the most alarming for us to hear at MMA. Our belief is that no provider should be able to unreasonably end delivery of an essential utility to public safety services. As we all know, this is a matter of life or death. In most of these instances in the past, the mistake was committed by the provider. Putting aside the surprising number of clerical errors, providers displayed no concern or compassion for the potential for risk they were creating. They simply did not know or did not care who the recipients of their utility was. Past experiences have shown that providers need to proceed more diligently before terminating service. And regrettably, it feels like this legislation is the only thing possible to secure the stability of public safety facilities. If for some reason an oversight or clerical error occurs on the customer side, public safety facilities should still be afforded the additional time and consideration that this legislation requires of utility providers. Again, these facilities are the bedrock to our communities and the core of many of the municipal operations that are essential in our communities. A matter of life or death, to reiterate. So 60 days advance notice and state authorization prior to the termination of utility are by far reasonable requirements of providers. It was just mentioned, and I'll reiterate, that ideally the safety net created by LD 1847 will never be tested. A normal level of customer service will resolve almost every instance of confusion. However, in the absence of provider due diligence, which we've all seen and experienced already in the past, this legislation will end the possibility that clerical or administrative errors on the side of both customer and provider will not create a risk to the residents of Maine. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this important matter, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that this committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, appreciate you being here with us this morning. Thank you for taking the time. And now we'll hear from Mr. Gillespie. If you could please introduce yourself, sir, and let us know what's on your mind.
Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Chief Bill Gillespie. I represent the Maine Fire Chiefs as a legislative liaison, and I'm also the fire chief in the town of Liberty under Representative Ziegler's area. I'm here today, Senator Vitelli and Representative Berry and members of the committee to support this initiative. And I'll talk to you, one, in references to a small town fire chief. I think the one thing that we miss the most as far as this electricity being shut off is the doors don't open. I think we mentioned a lot of things that we need electricity for, but you can't open the doors without the electricity. And a lot of fire station doors have 12 to 14, 16-foot doors, and they aren't easy to unhook and to push up and try to get completely up. One of my one of my pieces of equipment is 11'6" and a 12-foot door. So I have to make sure it's completely up before that truck can ride out the door. So when it comes for that situation, it's detrimental to us to try to get in here and get that done. For the areas that are on generators, if you have an automatic backup, that's great. But most rural fire departments have a rollout generator or one that we pull out behind the building in snowbanks. We try to hook up. So that's delay. Delay is us not getting out the door as quickly as possible. I will tell you, as a small town fire chief, it's not every single week that I make it to the town office to go through the bills that I have on a consistent, regular basis and get them paid. You get holidays involved, you get COVID. Unfortunately, I was down for COVID for 2 weeks and I couldn't make it in to pay bills. I don't have anybody else that backs me up on doing that. I'm a small town department that I do pretty much all on my own. I can tell you that there are times and opportunities where my CMP bill or other bills have been late. There have been times when they've been put on the wrong account. There have been times when the town says, well, we're all going to send these bills, 3 of them that we have, let's send them all in the same envelope with one check, and hopefully they can separate everything they can. We've seen numerous mistakes over the years of my tenure of 13 years as chief. So I'd just say, in support of this, we need that extra time because there are situations where mistakes happen and we can't afford to have the power not on. It's bad enough when Mother Nature does it. We can't have another avenue in there that's going to stop us from opening these doors as quickly as we physically possibly can. I thank you for your time and hearing my testimony this morning. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Are there questions? Representative Ziegler has his hand up.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to you, Bill. So if there's a bad weather, or you anticipate that you may have to go to the fire station because you may be out of power, but if they were to shut the bill off and not tell you, you might not know that, and then your systems would be of recharging wouldn't be working. So is that correct in thinking that this is more troublesome in the fact that you may not know, or in contrast to knowing that your electricity probably would be shut down because of weather? Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah, I mean, if we have a weather event, it's very common for us to man the station. We know potentially we're going to lose power. We'll go to the station, we'll pull the generator out, we'll get it ready to hook up so that we're prepared for that situation. The difficult time is when we just don't know. If it gets shut off without us knowing it, that's one of those things where you show up and you don't know exactly what to do. My department, because of an incident similar, not losing the power because of a disconnect, but we lost during a snowstorm that we were delayed to a structure fire by about 8 minutes getting the generator done in a blizzard. Fortunately, there was no one hurt or any injuries, but we just can't afford that trying to hook this up. Since then, we put on an on-demand generator, but like I said, I would reasonably say at least 60% of the fire stations, if not more, in the state of Maine use the old pull a generator out. They can't afford to spend a lot of money to put on-demand generators in.
Thank you. Further questions from the committee? Representative Berry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Chief Gillespie, thank you for joining us today. And I realize that Liberty may may not have a water district, and I'm quite sure it doesn't have a gas district. But you know, you represent the Fire Chiefs Association, and I'm just curious if you could speak at all to the importance of those utilities, especially in an emergency situation.
Certainly. You know, a lot of departments, bigger departments, city departments, use town water or city water to fill the apparatus after responding back from a call. A lot of times we may only use 50, 60, 70 gallons for a quick knockdown, and we'll just come back to the station and hook into the water in the station to fill, obviously, the water. If we don't have that ability, obviously, we're going either to a hydrant or we're going to a dry hydrant to replenish the water in the equipment. Not to mention showers. A lot of times they're coming back from a major call and showering the toiletries for a lot of these stations, large stations that may have 7 to 10 to 20 people in it. I mean, that's obviously a major concern if you don't have the ability to use the facilities. As far as the gas is concerned, heat. Heat is an extremely important factor here in the station. My station has heat on demand in the floors. If we don't have heat heating these and we go a couple of days without heat, we carry a lot of water, and a lot of our appliances have water in them. They freeze. So there's a lot of stations that have had problems with their boilers where they have to do a pump repair because the station had no heat over the weekend. It was a volunteer department. And here we go. We've got a frozen broken pipe in the pump system that needs to be replaced. That is costly. So for those utilities, specifically for the heat, for propane, it would be detrimental if it was unaccounted for an extended period of time.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Unmute myself. Seeing no further questions, thank you for being with us here this morning, Mr. Gillespie. Appreciate you taking the time. And now, Jordan, if there are no further members in the audience wanting to speak for this legislation, I think we will turn to those speaking either for or against. And I think Mr. Cody is among those. So maybe you could double check that. Yes.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please, Mr. Cody. Introduce.
Thank you, Senator Vitelli, Representative Berry, and members of the committee. My name is James Cody. I work for Bernstein Shore, and I'm here today on behalf of Versant Power to testify neither for nor against LD 1847. Let me just say it's a pleasure to be in front of you all for the first time this session and look forward to more discussion. First, we want to state very clearly on this legislation that Versant Power understands and supports the critical services that these public safety facilities and their staff, and importantly, their volunteers, provide to our communities, and we appreciate the sentiment that this bill proposes. Versant Power takes great care to monitor for these types of situations contemplated in LD 1847. While customer information systems don't always allow for explicit coding of public safety facilities, our customer service team members are extremely familiar with non-payment logs, credit logs, and screen every customer for exception scenarios. The Versant Power customer service team is able to make adjustments when they see regular payment history, even when those payments are regularly made late, and can avoid putting these types of facilities on disconnection processes. As long as there is regular payment history, Versant would not ever schedule these facilities for disconnection. In the rare instance where regular payment history was not identified and disconnection was deemed even potentially appropriate, which we're unaware of ever happening in the service territory to date, every measure would be taken to give that customer maximum opportunity to maintain service. This would include, among other things, working with those customers directly to attempt to develop payment plans or extensions, and contacting appropriate representatives if unable to make direct contact in order to sort the issue out. In short, Versant will do anything in its power to avoid disconnections in these types of scenarios. We'd be happy to work with the committee on this legislation to make it as clear and effective as possible if you choose to move forward with it. And to that end, we would recommend that if the committee does decide to move forward, that it should carefully examine the definition of public safety facility as defined in LD 1847. I won't go over that definition. You can see it in my testimony. But right now, that definition is not necessarily overly broad, but it's not defined in any categorical ways. We think that a better approach may be to use existing definitions by emergency management agencies who have defined these types of facilities in various ways to better direct the utilities on who you want included in these new processes, in these new customer coding systems, and who you don't. We just think making sure, for instance, as I was hearing about the sand and salt shed earlier, that's something that I'm not sure would occur to every person, but obviously could be considered an essential function for public safety purposes. I think making sure that that definition is as clear as possible would help better define these processes going forward. We appreciate the time and consideration, and we'd be happy to provide any information that you'd like for the work session. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or return with information for that work session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cody. Are there questions for Mr. Cody? I see several. Representative Grohowski and then Representative Foster.
Thank you so much. And I think to your point, we do want to do this right if we move forward with this bill, which I feel very strongly is an important backstop for common sense for our communities. I understand you have a billing system, you need to use codes, et cetera, and that's how our hospitals work. We want to automate everything, but it occurs to me that it would be, I hope, easy to let staff know that, if you get sent to a location that's clearly a fire station, a salt shed in the middle of winter, et cetera, please come back and just tell us you're not going to shut it off. Exercise your human common sense. And we trust you to do that because you are valued employees. So, I want you guys to be able to automate things. I'm sure that's efficient, but I also hope that every Maine person can understand what is a facility that is important to keep operational for the well-being of their community members. And I really hope that your staff is not in a position, and I know this was CMP example, so I'm sorry you came first, and I'm not trying to attack Versant, but I hope that you and CMP give your staff members the leeway to act appropriately and using their best judgment before making a decision like that, because I think that's how you build great teamwork and great success and the best service for our state. So, I would like to be able to help you get your billing codes right, but I also hope you can create a culture of excellence for your staff that I think already exists, but I really want that to be top down as well. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Representative Grohowski, and I think this is probably a good moment and opportunity to explain to the committee that that is already exactly what happens at Versant Power. There's a customer service team already in place that goes through a process when they see these disconnection notices, and they search for a variety of different categories before ever proceeding to any field disconnection process. One of those subject areas is, what type of facility is this? Is it a school? Is it a hospital? Is it a police station? So the team already manually screens for these types of scenarios. And my understanding is in the case of, let's call it a school or a hospital or a municipal building, they would manually avoid going to a field disconnection process, and they would just let their customer service team handle that directly with the customer instead. So that is precisely what's happening on the ground at Versant, and we're happy to do that, and glad you brought that up.
Representative Foster has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cody, for being here. And I would agree with Representative Grahowski that I would believe your field, people out in the field should have the capability of making that call. Knowing that especially from testimony we've heard today and past information we've received, that sometimes the meter may not be associated with the building that it's on through clerical error or computer error. And if a technician rolls up to a ambulance garage, for instance, he should have the capability of saying, wait a minute. Or if there are extenuating circumstances where a senior citizen's home, it's found that a resident is dependent on an oxygen generator, and that was unknown to the utility. But I digress. I do have two questions, if I could. First of all, you're quite familiar with PUC and their statute that they work under. I'm wondering if you would agree with some of the testimony we've received that they would be capable through rulemaking of addressing this issue. Would you agree with that from what others have told us?
I certainly, and I think the company certainly believes that the PUC is more than capable of creating rules and enforcing rules along these lines. I would defer to the committee on what process you want to move forward. But I would say that whether it's statute or a PUC regulation, Versant Power will treat that requirement as it is law either way. So we defer to the committee, but certainly either one would be workable in our.
And if I may, Madam Chair, second question. We received written testimony from Ms. Hart, who represents the smaller COUs in the state of Maine. And one of the items in her testimony, she raised concerns that this bill, if enacted, would increase costs to the COUs and also to obviously passed on to their customers. My question for you is, because she's apparently not attending today, maybe she'll be at the work session to answer this, but I'm sure it would apply, may also apply to the company you represent. What types of costs would be involved? Is it just a matter of changing the computer entry, or is it more than that for the organization that you represent, Versant Power? Thank you.
Sure. As I understand it, there would be some modest costs associated with reprogramming the customer information system to include a new customer class, which this would be, right? We would be putting these customers in a different category. That would be associated with some modest costs, some time and money to be able to develop that, make sure it works functionally. I don't want to portray that those are astronomical costs, but you're probably talking in the tens of thousands of dollars, not hundreds or millions of dollars. Just something to keep in mind. That may not be a reason, obviously, to not move forward with this bill. The other thing that I'm aware of is that there may be more efficient ways to do this, which is sort of directing some sort of manual system where we identify the customers that the committee and the PUC, Department of Public Safety, or whoever it may be, tells us who needs to be on that list. And then the company could manually block them from disconnection actions and then handle those cases manually because they happen so rarely and infrequently, at least in Versant territory. So there are some options there that we probably should talk about and engage on through the work session to make sure that we do exactly what the committee would like to do, and at the same time do it as effectively and low cost as possible.
You all set, Representative Foster?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Cody, for being here today.
Thank you, Senator.
And Jason, I just want to check before we go to Mr. Parent, who I believe is here to speak against the bill, if there's anyone else ready to speak, neither for nor against. I thought Linda Ball maybe was in the room. Can you double check?
I do see her.
Yeah, she is.
Okay. If maybe you could ask her to join us, and if you'll be patient, Mr. Parent, we will get to you. Give her another minute to cross the boundaries.
I think I'm here for real now.
You are here.
Okay, good.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Please go right ahead.
Always
Introduce
makes me-
yourself.
Thank you. It always makes me a little nervous with that minute in between as I'm transitioning into the panel. Good morning. I'm Linda Ball here from Central Maine Power Company, testifying neither for nor against LD 1847. We have submitted written testimony, so I'm not going to reiterate it here, but I do want to respond to a couple of the comments that have been made today, specifically about CMP. Most importantly, I really want to talk about Travis's visit to the Buckfield Fire Department. Travis did go to Buckfield because a bill was past due. The folks who were trying to apply a check that Buckfield had sent in were right here in Augusta, not in Boston. I point this out not because it changes the situation, but simply so the record is accurate. My folks here in Augusta are quite convinced that they tried really hard to reach the town, and I'm very sorry that that didn't work and that this confusion happened. While I know and Travis knows that he didn't have any intention of disconnecting power to a fire department, I am genuinely sorry for the confusion his visit generated. CMP does send people to customer locations to encourage customers to call us. Most often that happens when phone calls have been made and letters have been sent, and in this case, emails have been sent that we haven't heard back on. There are a variety of reasons that can happen, but the bottom line is we do send people out to try to have conversations with customers. We think that's a good service to get in touch with people. And as Senator Grahowski and others have commented, we do empower our field employees to make good decisions and not disconnect critical facilities. In this case, despite the massive confusion that's gone on since that visit, Travis absolutely believes he made that good decision, knew that he wouldn't disconnect the fire department, and that he communicated the need for a phone call to the company, which ultimately happened and resolved the billing problem. I couldn't be more sorry that that wasn't more clear during the time of the visit or more clear in the time since then. But CMP has the utmost respect for all of our emergency responders, and I personally am grateful for their service. I don't know what we'd ever do without them. We are deeply committed to working with municipalities and, in fact, all of our customers to manage their CMP accounts. For municipalities, that includes assigning a key account manager to every municipality across our territory who can serve as a single point of contact for any needs, any questions, and any confusion. I heard John's confusion about the town of Rockland and Brad's comments about potentially a billing confusion for Buckfield. I hope these towns and all other towns and munis are leaning on their key account managers to resolve any questions. If a town doesn't know who their key account manager is, they can always contact me or contact our customer care center, and we can get them in touch with their key account manager or resolve their issues. That's the most important thing for CMP. We are committed to not disconnecting any accounts which are known to be managed by a municipality unless there's an affirmative request from the customer to do so. And we have at CMP coded every known municipal account to prevent any credit-related disconnection of service. I believe that for CMP, this will avoid LD 1847 ever being tested. And I don't think that it's necessary, but if the commission moves forward with it, we will certainly implement whatever is required above and beyond the protections we already have in place. I appreciate that the pandemic and staffing issues and transitions to work from home have made what used to be very common bill payment practices more challenging, especially for towns that may be smaller with limited staff and with COVID impacts. Our town employees might be managing a lot of different responsibilities, from paying their CMP bill to schooling kids at home to working from home and managing internet access, which is making life more challenging for all of us these past 2 years. I know this has made life more challenging. My most important message today is that regardless of whether or not this bill moves forward, I want every customer to feel comfortable calling CMP or calling their key account manager or calling me personally if you need to manage your account. Only with that level of communication back and forth, with us sending information and you telling us what's confusing or what doesn't look right to you, can we resolve these issues. And I think that open communication and that willingness to call the company anytime there's a question can resolve virtually every billing process, which is very similar to what Verson said earlier today as well. Again, we are committed to serving our municipalities. If you tell us what you need, we will do our utmost to make that happen. But I do need to hear from you with those specific needs. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ball. I think there is a question from Representative Grohowski.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I genuinely believe that you want to do the right thing for Maine people and provide great customer service. What I'm troubled to hear is that you're putting the onus on the customer to anticipate when your billing system is going to have problems. I don't understand how it is that a fire station can realize, if they have not been contacted, that someone's about to come and shut them off. I mean, I really hope you can take your genuine goodwill and turn it back on the inside of the company to see what are those problems that are causing these disconnections. And I don't mean physical disconnections, but the disconnection between the customer service you want to provide and the customer service you are providing. I don't know what my question is here. I just don't know how to react to this in any other way but then to say it's very hard to ask people to guess at what is going to go wrong and spend time to make sure it doesn't go wrong. That is putting the burden on volunteer firefighters and fire chiefs, like we heard from, to take time to figure out a million problems that might or might not happen when they already have a million problems on their plate, from car accidents to cats and trees, quite literally. I used to be a firefighter. I have been on that call. It is real. I did not have to go up in the ladder, though. I will tell you that. So I just want to say now, because we're in this public forum, that I want to see you guys do better. I appreciate your concern, but please, please don't just say it's on all of us to figure out what the shortcomings are going to be and react to that. So thank you for listening.
So I would like to respond, and I apologize if something I said suggested that the burden is on municipalities to anticipate what might go wrong. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we've got folks here in Augusta that are doing their best to make sure that bills are accurate and our bills are accurate and the payments are applied properly. If a customer gets a bill that doesn't look like they expected it to look, if there's a past due amount that they think they paid, I would need to hear about that, because otherwise we think we've got the checks applied properly. And anytime there's confusion about that, just call us and we can straighten it out. I do appreciate that it's harder for a municipality to pay a bill than perhaps for a regular residential customer, and bills do go past due, and I understand that too. We have accounts coded so that there will not be a disconnection of service if we know that it's a municipal account. My question is, when the town says they can't make the math work, I would encourage them to call us and we can help make that math work. Or when they think a bill was paid, but it shows as past due, give us a call and we can straighten out that confusion. Not anticipating what could go wrong, but reacting to things that don't make sense on a bill, just so that we can have that conversation and try to straighten it out.
Representative Grohowski, you have a follow-up question?
Think about how I can phrase it with a question mark. I appreciate that. And I want to say, I don't know if I misunderstood, but what's a challenge is, for a homeowner, for a municipality, for anyone operating a business, to have to be continually looking at the bills that CMP sends to make sure that you all are doing your jobs properly. I mean, it is a burden on all of us to fill in the gaps. And I just, you know, my mother had a problem with a Versant bill. That's not you guys. I understand that. She spent 3 hours on the phone with them, okay? Because they could not apply 2 checks in the same envelope to 2 accounts, even though the account numbers were on the checks. And it sounds like a similar thing is happening in CMP territory. So I'm very frustrated because I hear complaints and it brings me to a boiling point when it affects our public safety. And so I implore you to look at what you are doing and think about how to not put the burden on us to always be watching what you're doing and seeing if it was done properly. I don't have problems when I go to the grocery store with them billing me accurately, hardly ever. You know, I look at those receipts. It's probably been a decade since I found a problem. So my question is, can you do better? Will you do better? And thank you.
I will assure you every day we are working to do our absolute best. And I hope that at some point we don't have any complaints or any concerns or any problems. We do have a lot of human beings working all of our processes. And I think that means there will always be some level of human error. But our goal every single day is to reduce the opportunity for error and to improve all of our customer relationships and how we do business, so that people are comfortable calling us, and so we reduce the need to ever call us. That's my goal too.
Thank you for that question, Representative Grohowski. Representative Foster, do you have a question for Ms. Ball?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple if I could. Thank you, Ms. Ball, for being here today, and also for the information regarding your field tech that did take upon himself to recognize the facility he was at and to contact those involved in the company before disconnecting. However, I would guess that your technicians are quite familiar with when they're at a fire station or an ambulance garage. They may not be quite so familiar if they're at, for instance, a nondescript sewage pumping station that has a meter, and we've already discussed how errors can happen, and compounding of errors can lead to these issues. 2 questions I have. One is, because it's been a while, I would assume that disconnect still means the technician disconnects at the pole and then removes the meter. Not sure of that. And secondly, I'm wondering if the committee needed the information, or if you could just tell us what it would take for CMP to look at your customers and identify which ones would fall into these categories. How is that determined, and is that something you could give us some information? For instance, in the state of Maine, CMP's territory, how many of these meters we're talking about? Thank you.
Sure. First, we can talk about how disconnections happen. We have AMI meters, which are smart meters, so we can connect and disconnect meters over the air, and that can happen remotely. In other cases, depending on the type of meter, we might need to make a field visit and turn a meter off in the field or at a pole. So there's a variety of different ways that can happen. Our accounts are coded for municipalities now so that a disconnect can't happen any one of those ways, unless it's requested by the customer. And that is something that's in my written testimonies. I think the bill should be clarified to say this is for collection purposes only. There will always be a need for emergency disconnections, whether it's that car accident or any other emergency that really risks public safety if we don't disconnect power. So I'd like to see that clarification. In terms of how many accounts, I can get you that information, Representative Foster. We did a very thorough search using things like city of, town of, municipality of, and looking for coding for different things we know that municipalities use in the naming convention. If this bill moves forward, I would hope that there'd be a cooperative process where the utilities would share with municipalities what accounts they have that are known to be utility accounts, and municipalities would identify anything else that was named in a way that we didn't capture. That is one of my bigger concerns, to be honest, is if it has a naming convention like Shenango Street water, we may not recognize that it's a municipality. And that one could slip through coding. So I'd want to make sure that we were being very thorough and it was in cooperation with the municipalities to make sure we had everything coded properly.
Okay, Mr. Foster, Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you.
I see a hand up from Representative Barry.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Ms. Ball, for your testimony. I was just hoping that perhaps for the work session that you, because there's been a considerable discussion around the, what's going on, sort of human judgment versus the new modern billing systems that have been implemented and the consolidation of those services in the Boston area. I'm just in an effort to help the committee to understand kind of what's going on and why this is happening. Could you please, for the work session, go back and look in the history of the company? And I don't know how far back the records go. I think the company's been around for over 100 years, but have there been any instances, any examples of this sort of thing prior to 2018? And if so, could you provide those instances? And I thank you in advance.
I don't have records prior to the implementation of the new billing system specifically for customer disconnections that could have happened in the past, but I can certainly take a look and see what anecdotal evidence we might have. I do just want to clarify, our billing system is not in Boston. We're right here in Augusta.
Is it I know my bill, if I may, Senator Vitelli, I'll clarify my question. When I send my bill with a check, it goes to Boston.
There is a remittance processing center in Boston for your very standard, we can apply the check payment. In this case, when we talk about the town of Buckfield, because that couldn't be applied because the account number and the invoice number on the stub didn't match anything in our records. That check came to Augusta and my folks here in Augusta were managing that check.
Great. And
follow-up question, Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Senator Vitelli. Just a final point. Again, this could be for the work session as well, Ms. Ball, but could you perhaps refresh the committee's memory on what back office functions have been consolidated outside of the state as part of the reorganization through Avangrid? And I believe they've been represented as being more efficient and saving money for ratepayers. I hope that's the case. But if you could just remind us of what has been consolidated, that would be great. Thank you.
So you're asking to have her bring that for the work session, is that?
That's right. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. Further questions from the committee for Ms. Ball? Seeing none, we thank you for being with us here today. And
thank you.
We'll see you at the work session. Jason, assuming there's no one left ready to testify, I think we've had a patient, Mr. Parent, here ready to speak against this bill, and we'll go right to Mr. Parent.
Yes, thank you, Senator Vitelli, Representative Barry, and members of the committee. We are testifying, and my name is David Parent. I'm the superintendent of the Sanford Water District, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Maine Water Utilities Association. And we are testifying in opposition, but what we're in opposition to certainly isn't resolving the issues that I've heard about today. I cannot imagine being put in that position as a public servant. It'd be similar to them shutting the water utility off and we could no longer pump water. We certainly wouldn't want to see that happen. And going to what Representative Grohotsky said, I think even if I sent one of my field staff out to shut off the police station or fire station, they'd refuse to do it. I hope they would, not that we would do that. So our opposition really is to water utilities being pulled into this when I don't think there has ever been an instance of a water utility doing something like this, number one. Number two, we come under PUC's Chapter 660, Consumer Protection Standards for Water Utilities, which provides strong protections, not only for public safety facilities, which aren't specifically called out, but for all customers. There's many reasons why we might terminate service, not just non-payment. It'd be public health reasons, system integrity, customer requests, emergencies. If the pipes froze inside of a fire station and burst, we certainly wouldn't wait for permission from the town manager to shut them off. We just go out and do it. So the first thing we suggest you do is to look at Chapter 660. It's very well put together and has worked well for many years. It has taken a couple of paragraphs out of the same chapter you're looking to add a subsection to. Look at subsection 704. It already calls out several specific customer types that PUC has addressed for us, for water utilities in 660. I'm sure it's another chapter for electric utilities. Our suggestion would be to do more general language, asking them to address public safety facilities in the same manner that they've done other customer classes, such as landlords, multifamilies, non-residentials, and residentials. I think it could happen there. If you do want to be more specific, and it's sounding to me like you do in listening to this hearing, I'd strongly suggest adding that this is just terminations for non-payment, so it doesn't impact some of the other reasons we might have to shut water off. 660 contains a lot of other language that may help you in the decision-making on legislation like this, and I strongly suggest take a look at it. It is 43 pages long, and it comes from 2 pages of statute, so that gives you an idea of how complex these things can get. I guess the only other thing I might say is that if you're trying to address an issue that something's happening due to billing error that probably violates the regulations now anyway, I don't know if writing another law is going to resolve that. But certainly we would never think about shutting off a public safety facility as water utilities for non-payment, and have no problem with you strengthening that part of the law or that part of the regulations in the rulemaking. I think that covers everything I had to say. I read my testimony. I certainly didn't do that. After hearing what everyone else had to say, I understand the issue much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parent, for your patience and your presence here today. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Parent, for being here. Just a quick question. Do you know of any of your facilities or other water district facilities that have their power disconnected, such as a pumping station for a sewer district, or in the past due to, well, any situation, I guess? Thank you.
I don't. I haven't heard of that ever happening. We did deal with some billing errors from CMP, which did not have anything to do with the shut off. It was more a mix up, and I think it was a mix up in readings or something, but they straightened it out. And I do have to say that in emergencies, ice storms, snowstorms, when we're off, through the York County Emergency Management Agency, we have been able to get a hold of CMP and get priority at times to get our pump stations turned back on. Of course, if we call their 1-800 number during an ice storm, you're not going to get through, but they have set up things through the Emergency Management Agency, and we very much appreciate that.
Sorry, Representative Barry.
Thank you, Senator Vitelli. And Mr. Parent, I appreciate your testimony. It's good to hear that the law that this committee enacted just a few years ago around that prioritization during emergencies is being helpful to you. thank you for joining us. And I just want to say to you that the committee does not have the Public Utilities Commission available to it today. We do have written testimony from them in support of the legislation, but I will certainly take it on myself to follow up with them about your thoughts about Chapter 660. Their testimony didn't indicate a concern about redundancy or anything of that sort, but I do want to look into that. So please join us at the work session, and we'll be able to talk with the PUC at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there further questions for Mr. Parent from the committee? Seeing none, well, thank you for being with us today, and hopefully we'll see you at the work session. And at this point, let me double check, Jason. I don't believe, from what I could see, that there's anyone left in the waiting room ready to testify on this particular bill. Can you check and make sure that's the case? Looks like everybody's there waiting for our next presentation.
I think we've gotten to everyone on the list, and Linda as well. So.
Okay. Then I will close the hearing on LD 1847, and thank you all for being part of this. And there are a few items that we identified that we might take a specific look at for the work session when that gets scheduled. All right, and with that,
great.
I think I will turn the committee back to Chair Barry.
Thank you so much, Senator Vitelli. Thank you for chairing, and Senator Lawrence has assured me that he will be listening in on YouTube afterwards, and it'll be almost as good as being there. We have had a longer than I anticipated public hearing, and I just want to give the committee a quick stretch break so we can come back fresh and hear from the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future, the Governor's Energy Office, Efficiency Main Trust, and others about the very important work being done regarding transportation, which of course has major implications for our committee, given that much of that is about electrifying the transportation fleet. So please take a 10-minute break right now. We'll make it 12 minutes. I appreciate that the presenters are generally able to stay until noon. So we will probably take it up to close to noon. We will reconvene at 10:50, and please turn off your video and audio until that time. I'll see you at 10:50. Thanks, everybody. Okay, welcome back. It is 10:50 and if committee members could turn their video back on so we can see your smiling faces, that would be great. We have a very important presentation and we're very much looking forward to it. Appreciate all those who have been waiting patiently to give it to us. I'll just wait for a couple more members to turn their video back on and make sure we have a quorum or at least close to it. Hoping we didn't lose too many people. See a lot of Zoom squares still, which is a good sign. And for our clerk, why don't you go ahead and start bringing people over. Thank you. That's great. And I see that Representative Kessler appears to be having some issues with his camera. Hope that's not a widespread problem. Let's see. All right, I'm sure he'll figure that out and others will rejoin shortly. So welcome back. This is still the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. I'm the House Chair, Representative Seth Berry, and we've already introduced other members. So without further ado, I want to get to this presentation and very much looking forward to hearing from Director Hannah Pingree of the Governor's Office of Innovation, Policy Innovation in the Future. I'll never get that quite right. Go PIF. And others on the team who have prepared a transportation roadmap and are able to share that with us today. So Director Pingree, I'll hand it right over to you to cue it up. My understanding is that we'll hear for maybe 30 minutes or so and then have a chance for questions at the end. So unless you recommend otherwise, we'll ask members to just reserve their questions until you get through the whole presentation and then look forward to the discussion. So thanks for being here to present the transportation roadmap.
Great. Well, thank you, Representative Berry and members of the committee. My name is Hannah Pingree. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future. And really, this has been a joint project of my office, the Governor's Energy Office, Department of Transportation, Efficiency Maine Trust, and we're all going to be here to help field some of the questions afterwards. But I'm actually going to pass it off to Dan to introduce this roadmap, and then really you'll hear from our consultant who was obviously truly the expert. So I'll just pass it to Dan. And again, I will say I am lamenting it is snowing outside my window, Representative Berry, and I'm sad to see the ice skating end. So good to see you this morning.
Agreed, but it's
good morning.
Get the skis out, right? Welcome, Director Burgess, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chair Berry and members of the committee. Great to be with you this morning. I'll keep my my introductory comments short so we can get directly to the meat of the presentation. But as you'll remember, the Maine Climate Council set forth and as you hear, the first recommendation, strategy A, was to look at how to reduce emissions from the transportation sector, which make up more than half of Maine's emissions. And one of the strategies within that called for the creation of a clean transportation roadmap. The governor issued an executive order calling for this, and a final roadmap was delivered by Cadmus, who you're going to hear from momentarily, in coordination with EUT Tech, who did a lot of the stakeholder engagement, advised by the group that Director Pingree mentioned, and then also included some stakeholder engagement. So we're pleased to have Jeff Morrison from Cadmus available to present. And transportation has certainly come up before this committee before, and will continue to, particularly how the potential impacts on the grid. And Representative Grahowski had a bill related to this, related to transportation and rate design at the PUC, and I know there'll be other bills going forward. So hopefully we'll find this informative and appreciate the opportunity to brief you. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Great. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, members of the committee. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Let me know when you can see this.
Yep, that's great.
Great. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Jeff Morrison from Cadmus Group. I led this Clean Transportation Roadmap, and I have about 30 slides. The first half or so I'm going to go through fairly quickly. I'm totally fine if you want to just stop and ask any questions along the way, or clarifying or otherwise. So I'll get started here. So just a quick introduction. Our consultant team there is at the top, and then really this whole project, we had close coordination with several agencies in Maine government, as well as a technical advisory group composed of industry, government, and nonprofit. And then finally, we had several points throughout the development of the roadmap where the public provided input. Up there at the top, you'll see some of the other recent reports that Cadmus has led for other mostly Northeast states, similar sort of transportation roadmaps. So the agenda here, we're going to talk just very briefly about the origins of the roadmap. Dan already mentioned some of this. Provide just a high-level overview of the roadmap, get into our recommendations, Cadmus's recommendations to the state, one slide on funding, and then key takeaways from the roadmap. Just very briefly on the origins of the roadmap, as Dan mentioned, out of Maine Won't Wait and the executive order called for this clean transportation roadmap. So Maine Won't Wait released about a year ago. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. In the Maine Won't Wait plan, there's 4 broad goals for the state: reduce the state's greenhouse gas emissions, increase resilience to climate impacts, foster economic opportunity and prosperity, and then advance equity. As Dan mentioned, the Embrace the Future of Transportation in Maine, it was the very first sort of strategy to get at those 4 goals in the last slide. So within that strategy A, transportation, the Maine Won't Wait really talks about sort of 3 overarching approaches to embracing the future of transportation. That is accelerating the transition to electric vehicles, increase fuel efficiency in alternative fuels, and reduce vehicle miles traveled. So finally, it's worth mentioning some of the key sort of climate-related targets in Maine Won't Wait, which are the greenhouse gas emissions targets and the renewable portfolio standard. And then there's also some transportation-specific targets in there related to the deployment of zero-emission vehicles and the reduction in vehicle miles traveled. Okay, let's see. And then sort of final context here. This is the transportation sector emissions for the state of Maine going back to 1990. As Dan mentioned, the transportation sector accounts for over half of the state's emissions. You can see those bottom 2 wedges there are the light duty cars and trucks are about 60% of the sector's emissions. And then the other 40% or so are heavy duty aviation and other, which includes a variety of modes such as boats and pipeline, locomotive. Okay, so that's the sort of origins of the roadmap. Now we'll get to the roadmap itself and talk about what's actually in this document. So before I jump in, the document itself was released about a month ago, so mid-December, and really it's the culmination of a set of recommendations that CADMIS has for the state based on what we're seeing in other states, that are similar to Maine, as well as analysis of sort of Maine-specific data. So this is the cover here of the roadmap, and just a really high level overview there. Those bullets on the right. We get into what Maine is currently doing. We propose 16 new programs for the state and local government and electric utilities. We estimate future electric vehicle populations, charging needs, and costs. And I will say, we tried to take a broad look at transportation in the state overall. Electric vehicles, though, kind of get the most real estate within the roadmap. They are the sort of key emerging technology right now that based on most analyses have the sort of biggest bang for the buck for reducing transportation emissions. So a lot of the roadmap itself focuses on electric vehicles. But not all. And so it's worth pointing out, I'm just going to start off by talking about main action on reducing vehicle miles traveled. And I won't go through all this text here, but in the roadmap itself, we do give a lot of good examples of what the state DOT is doing to reduce vehicle miles traveled, as well as local and regional bodies like GPCOG. There's a lot happening right now. There's also a lot of projects that are just getting off the ground in this space. Okay, so now I'm going to turn, next few slides are all on electric vehicles. And real quick, just a few sort of national trends in electric vehicles that are definitely worth noting and that we get into in more detail in the roadmap. The first is declining costs. Right now for many drivers of an EV on a life cycle basis, the cost per mile is actually cheaper to drive an electric vehicle than a gasoline vehicle. Most estimates, most reliable estimates suggest that within about 5 years, that upfront cost will also be at parity with gasoline vehicles. And then after that point, after that sort of upfront cost parity, electric vehicles are projected to get cheaper and continue the cost decline. So that's when households are really going to start seeing savings on their transportation budgets. Another notable trend, consumer acceptance of electric vehicles, is growing in recent years. This is a survey from a major automotive company showing that 30% of vehicle buyers today say that their next vehicle will be an electric vehicle, and 70% are open to buying an electric at some point. Those numbers are higher than they were just a couple of years ago. Also increasing electric vehicle manufacturing capacity throughout the country. These new plants that are producing electric vehicles are going in the ground right now. That's locking that production in the future. We know those vehicles are coming, and every year, we're hearing more announcements from the automakers that their plans on electric are expanding in the next few years. Another trend worth noting, greater vehicle availability. So right now it's fairly limited in terms of what you can get for an electric vehicle. Most electric vehicles are sedans or crossovers, but more and more here in the next year or two, we're going to start seeing larger vehicles and pickup trucks and more all-wheel drives that'll fit the consumer demand a bit better. And then finally, a notable trend is the supply chain disruptions that the entire automotive industry is seeing right now. So the vehicle market has been severely constrained in the last 6 months, especially, but basically since the start of the pandemic. And the real crunch started in around August with the Delta variant and automakers being unable to get the chips that they need for the vehicles. From what I'm hearing, that supply constraint should be getting better this year, but there's still some sort of pent up demand for vehicles. So, we'll probably still be seeing higher than normal prices for vehicles throughout this year. And then, eventually towards the end of the year, it's supposed to get a bit better. Okay, so that was a long time on national trends, but I think that was worth it. I'm just going to key in on 2 of these trends really quick to hit some highlights here. The automakers, I mentioned these commitments that they're making. This is a kind of an eye chart, but these commitments are real. There are several automakers who have said they're only going to be selling electric here, by 2030 or 2035. And as I said, the plants are going in the ground, so we know this production will be realized. This is on the vehicle availability, which I mentioned. Right now in Maine, there's 40 electric vehicle models that are available. California has the most models available at 65 different models. But as I mentioned, the sort of diversity of the different size classes are going to be increasing here in the next year considerably. So that will help the consumer sort of get the vehicle type that they're looking for. Okay, so on to electric vehicle projections. This was kind of a central set of graphs that are in the roadmap. I'll just quickly point out, these are light duty vehicles in Maine, projected out to 2035. On the left are the new registrations. So these are basically new sales in Maine that are projected to be electric out to 2035. And then on the right-hand side is what happens with the cumulative stock of vehicles. So not new vehicles, but the stock of vehicles, which has a corresponding rise over time for each of those different scenarios. If you had to press me, I would say the most likely sort of path here is somewhere between the blue and the orange lines. They're out to 2035. Today, Maine has about 6,500 electric vehicles, or maybe a little more than that now. So you can see these numbers, especially the cumulative numbers, if you look over on the right-hand side, quickly get into the hundreds of thousands. So this is the sort of emerging picture of the future that we should see in Maine. 2 slides on charging really quick. I've been talking a lot about the vehicles, just quickly about charging. This is just an informational slide, really. If you're not aware, there's different power levels of charging. Each of these power levels is needed for its own specific use case and location type. And the power level goes all the way from a standard plug that gets you a couple kilowatts, all the way up to 350 kilowatts is kind of the fastest chargers right now in the US. The faster chargers tend to be along the corridors, the highways, and the slower chargers tend to be, where vehicles are parked for long periods of time. In Maine, I think I'm trying to remember the split between folks who charge at home overnight tends to be about 50-50, I think, between that level 1 and level 2. So that's what a lot of people in Maine are using at home. Okay, and then just a couple maps on the current and the planned chargers in Maine. These are from Efficiency Maine Trust. And over on the left is the current stations that are in the ground, and on the right are the planned. Okay, now a few slides on recommendations. Again, these are Cadmus's recommendations based on what we're seeing in other states and on our analysis. These recommendations, and I apologize, it's difficult to have these in a PowerPoint. So we're just going to be looking at tables here for the next couple of slides. But these are several programs that will enhance electric vehicles in the state in various ways. Some are pointed towards the vehicles, incentivizing the vehicles. Some are on the charging. Some, and then, some are on education and awareness. So they have different goals. I would say, the sort of two top recommendations that Cadmus has for the state are there's two there at the top, Advanced Clean Cars 2 and Advanced Clean Trucks. These are two programs that basically require the automaker to sell a certain fraction of their vehicles as electric each year. And the real benefit of these programs is that the burden of electrifying is really placed on the automaker. They need to kind of put their pricing strategy of vehicles such that the electric vehicle makes sense to meet their mandated fraction of vehicle sales. And then several of these other programs on this list are really what we're seeing as best practices from other jurisdictions. So these are EV programs. This slide is on public and active transportation, our recommendations there. And then finally, the utility and efficiency Maine Trust programs. Just to point out a couple of these, demand charge relief, utility side, make ready infrastructure, and time of use rates, and marketing and awareness campaigns. So these are our, broadly our 16 overall recommendations to the state in the roadmap. We also have recommendations for sort of future research, and I won't go through all of these, but sort of gaps in knowledge or needed coordination that we identified through the development of the roadmap were recorded and are available in the roadmap. Okay, so funding. I do want to talk about funding. This is the current state of funding for charging. This is a fairly prominent piece of the Clean Transportation Roadmap. I'll just point out that there's money that the state has right now or has been sort of designated to Maine as part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the federal bill. Those are the kind of top two bullets there. The third bullet shows there's quite a bit of federal competitive funding available as part of this federal bipartisan infrastructure bill. But of course, Maine would need to go out and compete for that. And then lastly, $2 million through the New England Clean Energy Connect stipulation. And one of the pieces that we did is in the roadmap is, once you know the projected number of electric vehicles in the state out to, some future year, you can start piecing together what the annual investment in charging is needed. And, it quickly kind of adds up as the electric vehicle population rises, that needed investment in charging also rises. So this is broken out. The gray is the public chargers, and the yellow, orange is residential chargers. This is the sort of total dollar values in millions for charging that's needed. It's not necessarily the, it's not the public sector burden. It's supposed to represent that entire both public and private investment needed. Okay, and then on the vehicle side, and I apologize. There's this is a little difficult to read, but on the vehicle side, we're recommending an extended low-income EV incentive program. The state of Maine already has a low-income program. However, we're recommending as part of a sort of a equity-related expansion of that program to basically match the distribution of car buyers that are out there today with electric. As you probably know, most electric vehicle drivers today are fairly high income, above $100,000 per year in their household. This recommended new vehicle program would seek to shift that distribution so that more low-income families could take advantage of electric vehicles. Okay, so just last slide here, key takeaways. There's two policies I mentioned, Advanced Clean Cars 2 and Advanced Clean Truck regulations, really are very transformative in what they can do long-term. They send a strong market signal to the automakers. And as I mentioned, they place the burden for electrification on the automakers. So it's not an incentive program that the state would have to pay for. It's on the automakers to figure out. For the chargers, the second piece here, the demand charges are really what make the fast chargers economically challenging. And so the state needs to figure out some way to reduce that demand charge, and there's some options there. The state should continue looking at policies to reduce vehicle miles traveled. These tend to have smaller impacts on your greenhouse gas reductions as compared to electrifying the vehicles. However, they have potentially a wider set of social benefits to them. And then that last piece there on funding, I just mentioned, Maine should look at continuing ongoing investment from the state and federal sources, and continue looking for opportunities to compete for that federal competitive grant money that I mentioned. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think that was just under 30 minutes. So happy to take questions or comments.
Perfect. Hannah, Dan, how do you want to proceed? Should we just direct questions to any and all of you? Is there anything else you want?
That would be great, Representative Barry. I don't know, maybe Jeff can stop screen sharing, and if Michael Stoddard is out there, it might be helpful to also bring him in, just because I think his agency is also, there he is, great, excellent. So I think Dan, Michael, Jeff, and I are all happy to answer questions. Obviously, Jeff has a lot of the technical expertise with Michael, but I would also say that Dan and I are happy to talk about next steps. So
Wonderful. Okay. And I see a couple hands already. I'll begin with Representative Kessler.
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. I wanted to ask a question about one thing that I didn't see in the report at all, and this was discussed in previous plans about renewable fuels. And I understand that there's a lot of nuance that goes into, if a renewable fuel is truly, carbon neutral. But I was wondering if there was any discussion about, implementing renewable fuel standards, and just where that went, if you even had the discussion.
Jeff, do you want to answer that? I will say, actually, we didn't invite Joyce Taylor, but the DOT actually has been leading the way with a Maine-based biofuels company and is actually doing a fair amount with biofuels. So the state is doing some good work in that realm. But when it comes to actually zero emissions, obviously there are other technologies, and Jeff can talk a little bit about their viability. Obviously, California is going a little bigger on things like hydrogen, but obviously there's a lot more questions about the viability of that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. The roadmap, you're right that the roadmap did not talk about the sort of non-electric fuels very much. One of the things we did was, we tried to look at that funding gap and funding need in the next few years. And so one of our recommendations as a potential way to fill that funding gap would be a low carbon fuel standard, similar to California's, or New York also has one in the works right now. So we do talk about that as a potential funding mechanism.
Great. Any follow-up, Representative Kessler? Okay. We'll go next to Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Morrison. I was interested to see why the work with education and educational departments was relegated to a research status, given that 54% of our emissions are with transportation, school buses. Our school department seems to be a place where we're well suited to be having these synergies around cutting emissions, as we have regulations around procurement that might be a little prohibitive. For example, I've talked with some superintendents around trying to get these electric buses when both the caps on loans allowed as well as procurement follow a set schedule. And it would seem like support for schools to be able to get those buses would have a good return on investment for the time.
I'll just jump in and let Jeff talk a little bit more, but I would say you're absolutely right, Representative Sachs. The area of electric bus deployment is of interest to a lot of school districts around the state. We obviously have one bus right now on MDI, and it's working and it's going well, and the bus driver could sing its praises, but obviously that's that's just the beginning. I won't put her on the spot, but Senator Vitelli has taken leadership in this area and is, I think, considering some of the policy changes needed to address exactly what you just brought up this coming session. So we are working collaboratively with the senator on some things that are needed. I will say that the electric buses are still fairly expensive, and so figuring out both the financing mechanisms, but also how Maine can best compete for a significant new pot of federal money that is in the federal infrastructure bill. I think we have actually talked actively to CADMIS about how we can collaborate so that Maine could put forward an application that would be competitive to really make sure that we are ensuring that districts, regardless of their ability to pay, who are interested, have the opportunity to access them. So Jeff might be able to talk a little bit more about how other states are preparing. And again, I won't put the senator on the spot, but she is she is helping us lead the charge on that front.
Great, Dr. Morrison.
Thanks, Hannah. I'll just add that, yeah, the federal infrastructure bill has $4 billion for electric buses, 15% of which is dedicated to rural areas. And I think the details of that are still becoming clear, will become clear within the next couple of months. And the states that we're seeing are just being very resourceful and looking at all available funding streams. So I wouldn't say there's one sort of magic pathway to increasing the electric bus fleet, but it's a very attractive platform right now. There's a lot of social benefits, and there's a lot of sort of visibility benefits that go along with electric school buses. So it's certainly a good one to prioritize.
Thank you. And Representative Sachs, any follow-up?
No,
Okay.
thank you for the answer. And I'm glad to hear it's in the works. Again, it feels like a really nice synergy with $4 billion. And I know there's a 1.2 million just for New England alone, and school districts are saying we just don't have the resources to do it on our own. So really excited to hear some of it. And Senator Vitale, if you need any help, I'm your person. Thanks.
I have Representative Foster, Representative Stewart, and Senator Vitale in that order. I didn't know if Senator Vitale, if you wanted to jump the line because it's about EV buses specifically, but I see you shaking your head. So we'll circle back to that topic if it is. And Representative Foster, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, folks, for being here. I'm not sure who can answer my questions, but I'll start off with this one. And it is connected to Representative Sachs' points, I believe. Early on in the 130th, we had the pleasure of having Chief Engineer Taylor come before us. I'm not sure everybody was present, but I was there and asked a question regarding, and you touched on this briefly, Ms. Pingree, regarding looking at hydrogen for powering, especially fleet vehicles in suburban areas, in the cities, in southern Maine, that type of thing. But also, obviously, it might be helpful with fleets of buses or commercial fleets and such. And at the time, Ms. Taylor commented that, well, that's interesting. We haven't had time to look at it. So I'm wondering what you found in that regard, and if there's been any consideration at all in going that way, which would reduce the need for electricity on the grid in those situations. Thank you.
Both Dan and Jeff or Michael Stoddard, I mean, it is an area the Transportation Working Group has talked about, and it's sort of an area I would really say of innovation. We went to Scotland, and there's certainly much more advanced activities happening there, especially in areas where there's excess power on the grid. So I actually think we've been talking about medium and heavy duty vehicles more actively, and I think I call it an area that's important to pilot because there could be good opportunity for Maine. Again, I'll pass it off to Dan or Jeff or Michael if they can point to any other state that's really doing this well.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah and Representative. I think it's a really good question, particularly as Hannah mentioned in the heavier, the medium to heavy duty fleets, and as we're seeing technologies. I know that it's come before this committee about potential easing of constraints and utilizing hydrogen in the right place. And some of those have been on the thermal side, but I think the transportation side offers an opportunity for innovation there. And there are, Jeff would know better than I, but there are funding opportunities as well in the infrastructure package to do some innovative work around hydrogen. But I don't know if Jeff, if you want to talk about the technology or funding.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, from our perspective, hydrogen is getting a lot of attention right now. In the last year or so, it had sort of a dip for a couple of years where it just wasn't being discussed as much, and there weren't as many projects or as much funding. But we're now kind of back on the upswing, especially in Europe, as Hannah mentioned. And the leader is in the U.S. is California. You know, I always note though, they've been at it and building infrastructure, building stations now for about 6 or 7 years. They only have about 7,000 vehicles right now. The last time I looked, so that's what they have to show over that 6 or 7 years. So I do think that it's you know, it's a technology that's definitely needed in the long term. But the real question is, you know, do you take a sort of wait and see strategy and sort of prioritize other things like charging and electric vehicles now, or do you try to get out there and be a leader? To me, I don't think it's entirely clear yet.
Thank you. Director Stoddard, did you want to chime in on this one? Okay, great. Representative Foster, any follow-up?
So yes, if I could, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in follow-up, would it be safe to say that, and again, one of the attractions of these alternate fuels, if you will, is the conversion cost for existing fleets is lower than buying new electric. But so I would guess that looking at biofuels would be a better alternative for those fleets. Is that what you're finding? Thank you.
Representative Foster, honestly, I would say that the chief engineer has really been pretty engaged in exactly that question, even for the DOT fleet. So you might consider inviting her back. I know the Transportation Working Group has talked about both biofuels as well as other potential innovations for medium and heavy duty. And I would say it is a lot about that fleet. And there are conversations happening even over the next couple of months with medium and heavy duty fleet operators about potential different opportunities, both electrification and other alternatives. So it's an excellent question. And again, Joyce has really been very focused with her working group on that very point. So I would encourage you to invite her back.
And we can certainly consider doing that. Representative Foster, any other follow-up from you?
I'll pass at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to Senator Stewart next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Pingree, and your team for being here today. Appreciate it. It's good to see you all. I guess my question is more from a high level. You know, how is it that you folks are trying to reconcile, you know, it seems like all the time this committee is doing things that's going to impact rates, right? And we're making moves that are going to increase costs on consumers. And yet at the same time, we want more people to drive electric vehicles and install heat pumps and electrify the grid. And yet we're moving the wrong way as far as rates are concerned. And I attribute at least some of that to what's happening in this committee. And so I would like to, I guess, get your comment, you know, on how those two sort of, in my opinion, competing desires or competing goals are being reconciled as you're trying to, you know, move folks away from fossil fuel based, you know, sources of whether it's transportation or heat or whatever.
I think Senator Stewart, like that's the fundamental and important question to be asked. I think Dan could probably also further comment on it. Obviously, as Jeff has laid out, these vehicles, I mean, you saw what, you know, Ford is talking about phasing out gas-powered vehicles in their production line. Obviously, the Ford F-150, one of the top vehicles being driven right now in Maine. So I think we want all Mainers to have access to the technology that eventually will save them money, certainly save their pocketbooks, in that we still think, I think Jeff has done some work on the cost of charging, especially when you charge at home, and it is still, even in a slightly higher price situation, still more affordable than gas. I will say though that I think that this committee is probably far better equipped to understand that some increased utilization of electricity should bring down the transmission costs, and that, you know, again, the work that Dan should talk more fully about sort of reconsidering our entire power sector as well as the grid planning is needed to make sure that this is viable in the time frame in which the state will transition. But you know, I think that there are actually opportunities to bring down costs with further electrification. But again, we need power costs to be affordable for those folks plugging in their cars and heating their homes as we make this transition. That is fundamental. And so this committee will continue to be the key partner in that. So I think obviously Dan and Michael both have been grappling with this question as well.
Yeah, Senator, I think Hannah, Director Pingree gave a good overview. The only thing I would add is beyond it being critical to this is how the demand is managed with as we begin to see increased electrification, ensuring that we're looking at opportunities, whether it's rate design or program design, to ensure that as we add more EVs to the grid, that we're doing so in a thoughtful way to manage charging or to look at how to do that effectively. And I know Efficiency Main Trust and others are already doing some pilot work on that, but that's what I'd add to Director Pingree's comments.
Director Stoddard, do you want to chime in on this question of cost?
Yeah, very briefly. I mean, the first thing to note is we've been incredibly fortunate over the last couple of years to have received funds that were not from ratepayers. We got other money to do everything that you've heard about that's been done so far has been done with other money, not a penny from ratepayers for any of the projects that came through our work. Correction, there was one small pilot project that we did with some rate funds, but otherwise it was all from settlement funds from VW and the funds that Jeff talked about earlier for the plans we have for the next couple of years are all federally funded, at least what's been identified so far. So I understand that that doesn't last forever, but we've been very fortunate that we haven't had to do anything that would push up costs on ratepayers. And then I think the second part to emphasize is what Director Pingree said, and that is that especially like a part of the state where you're from, Senator, this would help dilute the fixed costs of running the grid in your area to put more load onto the grid and spread those costs around across more kWh is going to bring down rates, not push them up. So especially in our more rural parts of our state where the grid has quite a bit of surplus capacity on it, this actually could be a win-win.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chair.
Senator Stewart, yes.
Thanks. Yeah, and I understand that dynamic of needing more, basically more consumption in order to pull down those rates in the long term. I mean, I guess what I'm talking about more is on the short term. As we, and there's the other dynamic too, right? Of, and maybe this is something you can comment on, Phil, anybody, that as you've installed these charging stations, but the consumer is not necessarily paying for that electricity that comes out of it in all cases. And so when that happens, it gets, that cost gets shifted to the ratepayers. And so first question, I guess, is how much of that is going on and how much, what's the plan to avoid that going forward to make it, similar to fossil fuel where you swipe a card or you give cash or whatever and then charge so that cost doesn't get shifted. Obviously less of an incentive then to switch to an EV because then you have to pay, but in terms of everybody else and what that's going to do to rates, I mean, I think that there's a balancing act there. And I guess, that's a piece of this whole puzzle that has sort of been lost on me in some respects.
If I might, Senator, I can't think of a situation that meets the description you're giving of a place where people are charging up their cars, but that the ratepayers are paying for it. If you're thinking about places where it's being given away for free, air quotes, somebody is paying that bill, not the ratepayers. Either the town has decided to pay it or the local restaurant that wants to use it as a marketing amenity to bring people to their restaurant or their hotel. Those folks are paying for it, but there's somebody on the other end of that electric bill that's paying that cost. But most of the ones that you see going in are assessing some kind of they're collecting payments. The big ones on the highway, those aren't free. So those electric EV drivers are paying to charge up.
That's helpful. I appreciate that because that is the case in Presque Isle, right? We've got one that's free, and I don't know who's paying for it, but that's helpful explanation.
Great.
Senator, both Michael Stoddard and I are the pioneers of driving our own electric cars around. And so I would love to know where their free charger is, but my experience has been very much, it's cheaper to charge at home because you're obviously paying a lower rate. But I think everywhere I've ever paid has, you shine your thing and you pay for it on your phone or you swipe your credit card. And it is again, cheaper to do at home, but amazingly it works. So keep us posted on the free chargers though. That's good to know.
Well, somebody's paying for it, right? I guess
sounds like the town of Presque Isle. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great. All right. Seeing no other questions, Senator Stewart, you all set?
Well, I guess I've got one
Go ahead.
more.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And it's on the infrastructure front. You know, to what extent is as new projects are rolled out, I mean, you're going to have to partner with the utilities to some extent, right? I mean, same idea that and problems we've run into with things like net energy billing, right? When you don't have a plan to work with the utilities, it'll just be kind of chaos and there'll be problems that arise along the way. And so in terms of EVs and specifically charging stations, how is that dynamic going to be balanced between the utility having to install the new station and partnering with a company that does that, but then not, shifting that over to everybody else that's, a customer of that utility? Is the plan going to be that these private companies are going to pay for those installations so that it's not borne by everybody else? Or is the plan to sort of just say, this utility shall install X, Y, and Z?
I can take the first crack at that, and then others can feel free to chime in. Senator, the fact is that different states do it differently, and in some cases they might even do a little bit of both. Right now in Maine, the costs are the costs of the fast chargers and I guess the small chargers too are almost entirely being borne by the customers or the grants that we've been able to share with them thanks to the VW settlement funds and the NECEC settlement funds. So they're all privately owned and operated. So they're going to be at your local Hannaford, your local Irving station, your local mobile station. The Turnpike Authority is an exception to that, I guess. But those are all private dollars and or these grant dollars that did not come from the utilities. There is sort of an evolving question about what's called make-ready costs, which is hooking up the chargers from the pole where the distribution system is closest to the parking lot or wherever they're trying to put these chargers. And there's varying ways of doing this in other states about who pays that extra cost to go from the closest pole to the meter on the customer's building. But in most cases, up to date, those costs have all been paid by the customers.
So it's not the utility then that's going to have to pay for these?
It hasn't been. It's sort of a policy question about whether you would extend that and say, well, okay, up to the meter, we'll have the answer differs a little bit about whether you're talking about the high-speed chargers or the smaller ones that you see at your local restaurant or your town parking lot, for example. I think that the utilities do treat that as if they were hooking up to any other small business. And so I think that cost is socialized, but they treat that like any other customer. But for the bigger ones, those costs have been paid for through these grants.
And Michael explained certainly current situation well. I mean, I think it's a question for this committee to continue to contemplate. I mean, Representative Sachs' questions about school buses. I mean, there are benefits that I think it would be interesting to continue for this committee to engage in over the next couple of years. Obviously, school buses have been seen in other states as large battery banks that have benefit to the grid. The state of Virginia obviously is doing a major project. So I do think, Senator, your question is valid, and I think it's an important policy question for this committee to really, that is sort of one of the primary points that you need to continue to be engaged in. But I also think there are sort of the flip side. I mean, obviously, the new Ford F-150 talks about its ability to power a house for 3 days. That provides, enormous resiliency benefit, especially if you live in a rural part of Maine where your power goes out a lot. So I would say that, when it gets to some of these larger projects, like a group of electric school buses, the question of make ready and the ability to connect to the grid and the amount of power those school buses might need, I think it's going to be an important one for this committee to grapple with.
Great. Anything else on this point?
And thank you for indulging me, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anytime. And we'll go next to Senator Vitelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Hannah, for the plug, pun intended, for my legislation, which is coming back before this committee. LD 1579, I want to thank the committee, first of all, for having held that bill over last session, precisely so that it could be put in the context of the study that we've just heard about today, the report that we've heard about today. My hope with the bill, when it comes back to you in its revised form, is that it will, in a sense, sort of provide some propellant, if you will, for moving the state towards the goals that are stated, not all of them, some of them within the report that we just got today. So I'm grateful for having had this opportunity to look at how we can use some of our policy making to actually get us to the goals in the proper context. And I really thank the members of this committee for your thinking through all of what some of those components have to be considered in order to get us there. This isn't something that you can just do on its own, go out and buy electric vehicles or school buses or whatever. It all has to happen within a broader context. So I'm looking forward to the discussion on that. I think having seen this report will help all of us better understand what it is that we're talking about and hoping to achieve with our work here together. I did get very excited when I learned that the city of Durango, Colorado, where my son lives, just purchased their first electric school bus, and they're having a great experience with it. Durango, Colorado is, like in many places in Maine, hilly, cold, and rural. And so I'm hopeful that they'll be able to make their electric school bus work there, and we'll get some lessons from them as to how to make them work here in Maine. But, one step at a time, and let's just keep going has been my motto here. And I want to thank you for this report.
Great. Thank you, Senator Vitelli. And couple more hands going up here. We'll go to Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a couple more. I think this might be for the Governor's Energy Office, but I'm not 100% sure of that. And we don't need to go there, but on your slide 17 of the presentation, you talked about the progress in looking ahead, what the expectation is for adding electric vehicles. I didn't see anything in the presentation that estimates what the added load to the grid will be with that accomplishing those numbers. And so I would ask if that is in fact something that's being looked at as you develop these plans, and also in regards to, for instance, fleets or school buses. We know that with the solar farms that have been planned, that sometimes the infrastructure of the grid is a limiting factor. Obviously, some rural community that's got a fairly large bus fleet serving many towns, if we're looking at charging those, do we have any concerns at all about, will the local substation allow that in the middle of the night or whatever when everybody else is charging their vehicle? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Jeff, I don't know, Jeff or Michael or Dan, it was actually one of the areas Representative Foster sort of pointed out that requires specific grid planning for exactly the reasons that you raised. So I don't know, Jeff, you want to speak to that, and Dan?
I can go first. Thank you, Representative Foster. great question. And we basically, we have one graph in the roadmap that talks about future load. It's not very granular. It's statewide, and it's total megawatt hours per year going into the future. So that was really not a major part of this roadmap, but agree it's an important topic. And I think you alluded to the fact that it's very local. The problems tend to be very local in nature. So you really need to look at sort of each feeder, each substation in isolation in order to do it justice, which makes the problem pretty challenging. So.
Thanks, Jeff. And I would just add the the Climate Council modeling and some of the other modeling has relied on kind of the shows some of the overall statewide demand growth as Jeff talked about, and so some of that is in there. But as you get kind of more granular, more opportunity for grid modernization planning. I think some of that happening at the PUC through their grid mod docket. But Michael, you're off mute. I don't know if you want to mention some of your experience in putting these in.
I think I would just echo what Jeff had said. And Representative Foster's right. It is a very localized issue. In the short term, the things we're going to have to keep our eyes on are very localized. And what is the impact on the local substation? And there's going to be parts of the state where it's no problem at all. There's going to be other parts where it's a big concern, and we're going to have to think about it carefully. If you want to know what the end point is, the quick solution would be to go back to Dr. Silkman's report, because that's probably close enough. Conceptually at a macro level, you want to know what the total impact is. Go back to that report and see what he modeled for electrification of transportation. And now he went out to 2050, so that's a ways out in time, but you'll get a sense from that.
Great. That's this one right here.
That's the one.
Thank you.
One final
follow-up from Representative Foster. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One final question. In one of your slides, I think it was 26, you mentioned battery-powered or low-emitting power generation ferries. My understanding is, I believe we have one of those in service. And anecdotally, I've heard some issues and concerns with that. I'm wondering if you'd give us an update on how that's working out, any plans for others in the future, or what kind of issues they may have faced that were or were not anticipated, how we're dealing with them. Thank you.
Anybody want to take that?
Jeff, do you want to, I will say the DOT, I believe, has a new diesel hybrid ferry online, and Casco Bay Lines, I know, is trying to launch one. I think it's still in production. I think we've seen Washington State just came out with a very aggressive ferry electrification plan, a state that has a lot more passengers. It's certainly the hybrid model is what the DOT is currently focused on. There is money in the new infrastructure bill that would certainly help states. There's one part of a bill that we think, honestly, maybe only Maine and Alaska would qualify for. So I think it's an area of interest. Again, Jeff could probably comment a little bit more on the technology challenges. Again, this is another area where the chief engineer, Taylor, would be your woman. So
I'll just say really quick, there is a lot of interest right now across the US with electric ferries, but I think, it's always a question of, do you fully electrify and sort of oversize your batteries versus have like a diesel genset on board and batteries so that you can do either one and you have a little bit more flexibility. Every ferry system is going to need its own sort of feasibility study. So that's a challenge. The federal money is $250 million for electric and low emission ferries. So that's enough to definitely get this industry jump started. I'm only aware of about 5 ferry systems in the US that have electric ferries. So in that way, Maine is really on the leading edge of that. And, I think I think it's a really positive thing for your state, even if the technology is having some challenges.
Great. We'll try to do rapid fire for the next few minutes. I think someone needs to go at noon, correct? And perhaps we should just plan to end at that time, unless you others, some of you are able to stay on. So without further ado, I'll go to Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize if this was already said, but in regard to the advanced clean cars and advanced clean trucks proposal, I saw that there is action already within the state to adopt rules to increase adoption of zero emission vehicles. And so I was wondering, is this basically already underway through agency rulemaking?
Representative Kessler, this would be an excellent question for Commissioner Loisem. This is within the DEP and the Board of Environmental Protection. The Advanced Clean Truck Rule is for the board. It is currently paused. There's a medium and heavy duty stakeholder group that's meeting to fully understand the rule, and we want to get it right for the state of Maine. So actually, Chief Engineer Joyce Taylor is helping to lead that group as we really just talk through the issues and make sure some of our fleet operators understand the rule, its implications. But we think it is helpful. The whole point of some of these rules is to make sure we have vehicles being delivered to Maine. I know, for example, both the DOT and some cities have tried to procure electric buses and have found it's very difficult. So part of these rules are actually about the manufacturers delivering models to your state, because right now there are not enough models to meet the demand. So it's not about forcing anybody to buy the vehicles. It is actually about having them be an option for consumers. So these rules are sort of under the California EPA waiver. We are one of the states that aligns. The second, Advanced Clean Cars 2 is still under development, so that rule is not available for consideration yet, but Advanced Clean Trucks is currently being considered by the Maine Board of Environmental Protection, and we will be happy to keep you posted on that.
Great. Any follow-up, Representative Kessler?
Yeah, just throughout the whole process, if there's some way that we don't reference the state of California, that'd be really helpful in our cause.
I know, I'm sorry. That's the federal EPA's really has given them. I won't say their name again. A group of states, I think 17 of them, maybe more now, jointly work together as independent states working on our own independent rules to try to make a difference here. So
great. I don't see any hands, but I have so many questions myself, but I'll just confine myself to saying that we finally made the leap as a family and got a 2017 Bolt in September, and it's been fabulous. And one of the big surprises for me was realizing that I rarely use the public charging network. It really, I had a gasoline, mentality going into it. And I thought I'd be looking for every gas pump, every EV charging station, right? And in fact, I'm doing the vast majority of, as Director Pingree said, of my charging at home. And I think, the more I read about it, the more I realize that's a common shift in thinking that happens. And so as we go to charging at home, and we saw that 50% or so of residential EV users right now are using level 2 chargers. I have found it incredibly helpful to have a level 2 charger, but it wasn't free. It cost me $1,200 for the electrician and $600 or so for the level 2 charger. So I just want to ask if that's sort of baked into the modeling and baked into our thinking about what the cost is to own a vehicle. Yes, they are cheaper. There's no question that electricity is cheaper. It's been wonderful to have my CMP bill go up because I know that I'm saving money at the gas pump, right? So I don't mind the additional cost, and so far I really am saving money over time. But is that cost for the electrical work to get the 220 circuit and the level 2 charger, you know, because some people are going to need it, right, depending on their commute. Is that sort of figured into the math here? I don't know
Jeff,
if
you
that's
want to answer that?
Jeff.
You said Jeff, sorry, you didn't hear that. We definitely accounted for those non-capital costs when we were putting together our numbers. Yes, and I think, you know, one sort of open question is to what extent that like an incentive for the consumer is really needed to induce an electric vehicle purchase. You know, is that a barrier that's just going to you know, put people off from buying an EV? So that's kind of a policy question in terms of whether, you know, the state wants to put an incentive program together. I don't know if Michael, if you wanted to add anything there.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It did get counted. Those costs did get counted in the estimates of the total costs, and it really varies case by case. But I think, like with all these incentive programs, once you get through the initial phase, which I would say we're still in, of just getting people familiar and comfortable and attracted to the new high efficiency technology, over time, the program should get a little more refined and targeted to really try to pinpoint the people who have the bigger barriers, or the people, you know, for whom that cost is a bigger barrier. For some folks, it's not going to be that big a barrier, but for others, it really will. And so hopefully over time, our program design gets more refined to really target that.
Great. And on a positive note, I think we decided we needed the level 2 charger because we wanted to use that car more and use it for every single trip, including, you know, sharing it with 4 people in the household. So the trickle charger was fine at first and rarely needed the public infrastructure.
Yeah, I do want to emphasize the prices do seem to be coming down somewhat. It's not going to necessarily change what it costs to run the wiring from your electrical service to an outlet in your house, but a lot of new EVs come with their own charger wrapped up in a nice little bag in the back seat. And so you have a charger if you want it. It's really a fancy connecting cable. It's looking to me increasingly like you're just going to need an outlet that can supply the 220.
Yep.
Mostly we need more electricians, right, Representative Barry? That is probably one of our.
Yes, we do. That's why we have Representative Cuddy on the committee to take care of that for us, and others here too. So with that, thank you so much. We want to respect your time, and it is past noon. So Dr. Morrison, Director Pingree, Dr. Burgess, Director Stoddard, I really appreciate your coming before us and presenting the roadmap. I'm sure we all will have follow-up questions for you, and we'll dive back into the report to you know, read up on those details and absorb a little bit more. So again, really appreciate your coming. And any final remarks from any of you?
I would just really just thank you all for your attention. Really appreciative of Jeff's time and helping to bring this to you all. Again, I think there still is a lot of heavy lifting in front of us, and I think Dan and I and Michael and our teams are committed. Obviously, it is going to require close partnership with the legislature, so really appreciate the time that you put into helping us all understand what this future looks like.
Great. Okay, well, thanks again, everybody. And that concludes our work for today. We'll see everyone in person at the State House tomorrow. That'll be exciting. And oh, it doesn't conclude our work for today. I'm sorry. Our analyst is here to remind me that we have a language review. And Lindsay, take it away.
Excellent. And this should be fairly quick. So what we have on the schedule is language review for LD 1829. This is an act to amend the charter of the Ogunquit Sewer District. So we had a public hearing on January 6th, a work session on the 13th, and the committee voted ought to pass as amended, subject to 3 changes to the bill. So I will share my screen and walk the committee through that if we're ready.
Perfect.
Excellent. Bear with me. Okay, please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so the three changes that we talked about at the work session, these were three technical changes. So the first one here was to replace service corporation or district with utility, which had been done previously, but this was just for consistency in language use. Next up is swapping out. Originally, the bill referenced subsection 3. The intent was to reference subsection 4. So we just made that change. And then lastly, adding language here with respect to language in the charter that deviates from the Standard Act, which is fine, but to make sure that the language in the charter sort of still maintained itself despite the Standard Act, we needed some notwithstanding language. So as discussed, that was included. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So those were the three technical changes. The only other element of follow-up, Senator Lawrence had asked whether the permitting the district to provide services to an adjoining municipality, like another user, would trigger any kind of constitutional issues, and it wouldn't. We don't see any constitutional problems with the bill or with allowing the district to do that. So does the committee have any questions for me?
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, it looks like that language is approved.
Fabulous.
And we can report that one out.
Wonderful, thank you. This will go through, enter the processing now.
Outstanding. Okay. So that really does conclude our work for today. And it'll be great to see everyone tomorrow at the State House and in person. So hopefully the roads will be clear by then, and we'll see you all up there. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys then. Bye-bye.
Bye.